Welcome back. The DA is dissatisfied with what it calls the ANC government's alignment with Russian interests. This is as President Cyril Ramaphosa has failed to condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine. South Africa, Russia and China recently concluded joint military exercises that have further fueled tensions with Washington, D.C. Joining us to tell us about the DA's concerns right around our relationship with Russia is Dean Mcpherson, who is the DA member of Parliament. Dean, thank you so much for making time for us. You have said in your statement that you are concerned as the DA about the resolution by the House of Representatives for President Joe Biden's administration to review the U.S. relations with South Africa over Pretoria's decision to host those military exercises with China and Russia. But our government says, well, that's not a big deal yet because it's just a mere proposal and it's not even been tabled yet.
Well, Clement, I mean, these things, are a big deal because South Africa accesses hundreds of billions of rands worth of trade through the African Growth and Opportunity Act, also called AGOA, in the United States. We also access duty-free trade to the European Union through the European Partnership Agreement. And our trading partners have made it very clear that, our, affection and love affair with Vladimir Putin and Russia could have consequences. Now, when both of these agreements are up for renewal, AGOA is up for renewal in 2025, you would think that South Africa, in the economic climate that it is, would be doing absolutely everything possible to secure duty-free trade into the U.S., one of our largest trading partners. And yet we seem to be trying to do exactly the opposite. Now, Russia is a very, very small trading partner for us. So it just makes no economic sense in the position that we have taken, putting hundreds of billions of rands worth of investment at risk, and as well as hundreds of thousands of jobs. So, these things and the decisions that we take today have long-term consequences for us down the road.
Yeah. How worried are you as the DA, particularly about AGOA, the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which honestly, gives South Africa privileged access to the lucrative market in the U.S., because we've got this duty and quota-free access to that U.S. market, and that's benefited us a lot over the years. If our tensions are not resolved, one wonders how that will affect the decision to either extend or terminate this policy in 2025.
Well, I'm deeply worried because I just don't see the legwork that's being done into renewing this. We see resolutions coming out of the out of Congress in the United States, and while those might seem sort of fairly innocuous at the moment, there is a strong sentiment that's building in the U.S. and in the European Union that South Africa is just no longer wants to be a partner, with them. And so, so that sentiment does exist. It's very real. Secondly, the work is just not being done by the department. The minister is absolutely nowhere on it. And so it's not so much that the agreement will be terminated. It's just that we will be excluded to our detriment and to the benefit of other African nations that will stand to benefit from it. And once we out, we out. There's no second chance to come back into it. So, we've just been grey-listed. That has huge financial implications for us. To lose AGOA would just be, just another nail in the coffin for South Africa. And let's be honest, Clement, hundreds of thousands of South Africans, working-class South Africans, rely on AGOA to sustain their jobs. They may never have heard of it. They may not know anything about it. But it is fundamentally key to the wages that they take home every month.
Yeah. Well, some people, Dean, may argue that South Africa can allow the U.S. to choose who the country must be friends with. At some point, the U.S. must respect the position South Africa has taken on the Russian war in Ukraine, the so-called neutral position, whether it agrees or disagrees with it. Isn't that at least the courtesy you afford a sovereign state?
Well, no one's doing us a favor, by having us in those agreements. Agreements always come with terms and conditions. China is renowned for using economic agreements to drive political agendas. But, I guess the argument would be slightly valid if South Africa was actually neutral in this conflict. But it's absolutely not. I mean, it's shown, it does everything possible to actually show that it's not neutral. So that argument doesn't hold water. But the reality is that, we can either choose to accept the terms and conditions of these agreements, or we don't have to. But there are consequences for not doing so. And I would argue that if we are a human rights-based sovereign nation, as we claim to be, that makes international policy on the basis of human rights, then there is just no logical sense for the position, the so-called neutral position, which is not on Russia. But secondly, I mean, the economic consequences of, our flirtations, with the Kremlin just make no economic sense on that front either. So it's a lose-lose position that South Africa is taking. For what benefit, no one has been able to identify it.
You've requested a meeting with the U.S. ambassador. What are you hoping to achieve with that engagement?
Well, I mean, and I must, give credit to the parliamentary committee in Parliament on this, because I think that we're all deeply concerned. Even my colleagues across the aisle from me are deeply concerned about the inaction that is taking place with regards to AGOA. We may disagree on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But there is widespread agreement, I think, amongst MPs in our Portfolio Committee of Trade, Industry and Competition that not enough is being done to get this agreement across the line. So, it's always important to try and understand what, legislators in the US are thinking. And so, I'm hoping to get some insight from the ambassador on that, because, at the end of the day, I also want what's best for our country, and renewing AGOA is in the best interests of South Africa. So whatever role we can play as the opposition to facilitate that, we will certainly do so.
Yeah, and maybe we can get some clarity on what the agreements have been, between South Africa and the U.S. when it comes to AGOA and the decisions that South Africa takes that may affect that. Because as I said earlier, some people will look at it and say, would it be okay for South Africa to also punish countries that are friends with the U.S. and having called out the U.S. for attacking, for invading, for occupying countries and leaving devastation in those countries, whether it's Syria, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen? That would be unfair, wouldn't it?
Well, I think that we must be very careful that we don't try and extend some form of moral equivalence to try and justify the actions of one country versus another. At the end of the day, this is about trade agreements and about being able to fill the economy with jobs and investment in South Africa. And maybe the argument would hold water if you could simply replace the AGOA agreement with a Russian agreement or a Chinese agreement. But the fact of the matter is that no such agreements exist or will ever exist, because they are very closed protectionist markets. So I'm not here to judge whether the US is the good guy or the bad guy in this. What I want to do is see this get across the line. And I think that some of our posturing that we are taking in international forum, doesn't help us, and it puts these, agreements at risk. And if South Africa wants to remain neutral, that's fine, but then be neutral. And maybe, we wouldn't be in the precarious position we are on AGOA. The problem is that we say one thing and then do something completely different. And that's, I think, the problem that our international partners have.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at our agreement with China and Russia to host the military exercises, and then we decline to participate in the planned Cutlass Express military exercises with the U.S. without even giving an explanation, I mean, that speaks volumes on its own. Dean, thank you for making time. Good luck with your meeting.